Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today I'm coming at you with a midweek update. So before we jump in, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, make sure you subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself so that you can get up to speed. Now, great news from Tom Engel on Twitter. As of yesterday, the Mexican Senate Justice Committee advanced a cannabis legalization bill as amended by the Chamber of Deputies towards a final floor vote. 2 more committee stops are expected, and the deadline to get it all done is by April 30th. So stay tuned for that. And then later yesterday, a second Mexican Senate committee approved the cannabis legalization bill that was revised by the Chamber of Deputies. So one more panel is next, then a final floor vote potentially as soon as Thursday. So keep in mind, we do expect this before April 30th, and it's April 7th, so there's plenty of time. But this is great progress because, again, I think once Mexico actually takes this action, it's going to put pressure on the U.S. to do the same. So great to see that progress continuing down in Mexico. Now, on top of that, MSOs continue to execute. Curaleaf announces new branding for Illinois retail locations as they finally closed their grassroots acquisition and taken ownership. And they've opened a new Westmount store in contribution to Illinois Social Equity Partners. Now, this is their 103rd retail location nationwide, so Curaleaf continues to expand. And additionally, want to mention that it is their 10th store in Illinois, and in Illinois, you're capped at 10 stores. So basically, that's it for their capacity there. But we know that Illinois is one of the fastest growing states because they just recently legalized adult use and they've got a large population, and they are handing out more licenses, which allows more store openings in time. But additionally, what I want to point out is that Curaleaf has contributed $950,000 to impact social equity with 6 strategic partnerships focused on education and job training in the greater Chicagoland community as part of its corporate social responsibility rooted in good initiative. And I just want to point out, I made a video on TikTok yesterday, and I was actually looking at the stats. I'm like, well, it's great to see what these cannabis companies are actually doing with the communities that they're getting involved in. Because if you think about what alcohol companies or tobacco companies or big pharma companies are doing, you don't hear about anything, right? And I was actually looking at the numbers, and big pharma in 2019, well, not big pharma themselves, but their products, opioids, caused 48,000 deaths in 2019. So, what are they doing to reverse that? Not much. Alcohol is attributed to 40% of crime. So what are alcohol companies trying to do to communities to help that? Not very much. And tobacco kills about 450,000 a year, or at least continued use over time. So just goes to show that some companies are really out for helping the community versus certain other industries that have been against cannabis legalization for so long. Now, Trulieve as well expands their footprint with acquisition of Keystone Shops. So this acquisition broadens their presence in Pennsylvania with 3 medical cannabis dispensaries in the greater Philadelphia area, the most populated region in Pennsylvania. So this transaction will add 3 operational dispensaries to the Philadelphia area to Trulieve's retail footprint of 83 dispensaries nationally, and I think they still have 75 in Florida, so they are expanding outwards. And this will expand their footprint in Pennsylvania, the 5th most populated and limited license state, adding to Trulieve's existing operations in Pennsylvania. And what is the cost of the proposed transaction? It's an upfront payment of $60 million, comprised of $40 million in Trulieve shares and $20 million in cash. The deal does not carry any deferred payment or earnout, and it is subject to customary closing conditions and regulatory approvals, and is expected to close during the second quarter of 2021. Now, I did just find this interesting. I wanted to point out, if you watched the video on Sunday, I mentioned how Canopy purchased a company or a brand in Canada, but it didn't mention the cost or the price or anything like that. So it seems like you get a bit more transparency out of some of these U.S. multi-state operators as for more than you get out of some of the Canadian licensed producers. And on top of that, though, Trulieve does announce that they are proposing a public offering, which does create a bit of dilution. So they are offering to sell 4,400,440 subordinate voting shares as an underwritten public offering. And what is the point of this? Why are they diluting? Net proceeds from the offering are expected to be used primarily to fund Trulieve's business developments and for general working capital purposes. Closing of the offering is subject to certain conditions, including, but not limited to, the receipt of necessary regulatory or stock exchange approvals. And from what I'd seen online, it seems that this is roughly equivalent, based on the price that they're at right now, to about $250 million. So seems like they want to go shopping, and this will be used for business development, further expanding the footprint, maybe Pennsylvania, maybe New York, we don't know, but these MSOs continue to execute. Now, I just wanted to point this out because yesterday I came on to talk a little bit about how we're seeing some new people join the cannabis fight, among them Charles Koch, and it just goes to show how quickly you can see the awareness change. And we're seeing just more articles out basically because people with more money want what they want to happen go their way. And just so the Cannabis Freedom Alliance launches aims to spur federal legalization of cannabis. And I just wanted to highlight this part of the article, basically around their 4 principles of legalization, which is descheduling of cannabis under the Federal Controlled Substances Act and the facilitation of an orderly legal market for cannabis. And this is huge because, again, descheduling it completely removes it out of government control so that we can actually study the plant's benefits. The second would be expungement of existing federal cannabis convictions and encouragement of individuals to successfully re-enter the workforce. Third is promoting entrepreneurship on a free and open market for legal cannabis. And then fourth is pursuing a tax regime that allows legal cannabis to compete with and ultimately eliminate the illicit black market. So you can find more about the link below. But yes, the cause is ultimately a good thing in the long run, and it's righting past wrongs that should have been done a long time ago, ending the prohibition and criminalization of cannabis in the United States in a manner consistent with helping all Americans achieve their full potential and limiting the number of barriers that inhibit innovation and entrepreneurship in a free and open market. And that's ultimately what you want. Just not to legalize it, but then still have control like Mitch McConnell did with hemp, ironically. You want it to just be a free market so that, people can start their own businesses. People can not be afraid to get into business for themselves and change the trajectory of their lives. And ultimately, I think that's good for everybody to have that freedom of choice back. Now, I did cover this last week. Illinois March sales did soared 120% from 2019 March to 144.8 million. Now, just to recap, 109 million of this came from adult use sales. So I just wanted to point this out to highlight how much of a difference that legalizing adult use makes. So that is why getting into these new markets, Illinois, Arizona, New Jersey, is so important. So that just goes to show the difference that makes, which if you subtract 109 from 144, if I give myself more time to do the math, prepare beforehand, but it just goes to show how little is actually being spent on medical. And I wonder if a large portion of medical is just buying adult use because they don't necessarily feel the need to have to go through their doctor anymore. Just thinking out loud, but wanted to point that out. Ultimately, it's these markets that legalize for adult use. And Ohio's growing medical cannabis market poised to reach 400 million in sales a year. So Ohio's medical market is projected to do 425 million in 2020, a substantial increase from 221 million in 2020. Mind you, this is just medical in itself. So the issues linger. Apparently, why their sales lagged a little bit was because of restricted patient purchase limits, low patient participation, and insufficient cultivation capacity. Now, what improves this? Education, helping people realize that cannabis is a medicine and not something to be afraid of. But I do want to just point out that Ohio has not legalized for adult use yet, but it is one of those states that has a larger population of about 12 million. So look out for Ohio to do that in the next few years. And the moment that they flip the switch there, that should also be a big market that does come into play. So, good progress out of Ohio at least, but the main thing is education and showing people that cannabis is not something to be afraid of. Now, on top of this, Governor Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania says legal cannabis is widely available within driving distance from Pennsylvania, from New York to New Jersey to DC. Now, obviously, it's not legal yet in New Jersey, but he's making the point that we want to legalize it so that so that we can create our own tax revenue and we don't have our Pennsylvanian citizens going to these other states to buy cannabis. It's already accessible. Why not legalize it here and keep that revenue? And I obviously just did want to comment on this guy down here because the stuff stinks and makes me sick every time I smell it, especially on someone else. It makes me hyperventilate and want to throw up. Keep it illegal. People like this that slow down change, Michael Wade, obviously. I was happy to comment right away and be like, dude, come on, the world's not about yourself. And you seem to be pretty old, and you're not, like, he's a grown baby that still thinks the world revolves around him. And at some point when you grow up, you realize, like, okay, well, what I want is important, but it's also what we want as people so that we can progress as humanity going forward, right? I just wanted to point that out. But you still find people full of this that they're afraid to educate themselves, and they still think, what they knew growing up is set in stone. But the fact is, things change. We learn as we go. We continue to evolve. And you got to factor that in. Now, this is an article from GoErie.com. New York and New Jersey have legalized recreational cannabis. What will it take in PA? So I want to dig through this a bit because it's very interesting. Just goes to show how, again, complex politics is and how difficult it is to get stuff done, especially debating between people. Now, one by one, Pennsylvania neighbors are moving to legalize recreational cannabis for adults. There's a majority of support for doing the same here. A March poll from Franklin and Marshall College showed 59% support among registered voters for legalization. So again, if 59% of people, more than 50%, want something, that's grounds for working towards getting that done. And after years of saying he wouldn't endorse such a move, Governor Tom Wolf changed his position in 2019 and has committed to signing a bill if it reaches his desk. What caused him to change his mind? We don't know. Maybe it was funding. Maybe it was like opening his eyes and seeing what's around. Unfortunately, yes, we won't know that, but it's just good to see that he's obviously seeing the bright pic or the bigger picture and the bright side of legalization. But in order for that to happen, the idea would need to gain backing among Republican lawmakers who control both the state House and the Senate. So although the governor in Pennsylvania is for it, the House and Senate in the state of Pennsylvania is controlled by Republicans who oppose medical cannabis. The House Speaker Brian Cutler opposed medical cannabis when it passed in 2016 and said in 2019 that legalization wasn't the right move in helping thousands of Pennsylvanians who are battling drug addiction. Now, this is just so sad because this man is clearly wrong, because we know that cannabis is pretty much an exit drug that can actually help get people off of more addicting drugs. And then more recently, Cutler's chief of staff told Penn Live it wasn't a priority as the state continues to grapple with the coronavirus pandemic, while the spokesperson for House Majority Leader Carrie Benninghoff told the York Daily Record in February there isn't support in the caucus. So that's very unfortunate. Mind you, what the governor says does have some sway over their team. So, and this is just to highlight how silly it is when your politicians make decisions based on what they feel is right, but they don't use data or evidence or facts to back up what they think. Senate President pro tempore Jake Corman in 2018 called the idea reckless and irresponsible, though the past fall he signaled the chamber was open to vetting a proposal, but not at that time. And then Democrats in the chamber, as they have in past sessions, are still pushing for legalization, with one of the major difference this spring, a Republican sponsor. Now, there was one thing that was quite juicy in here that I wanted to point out, and I think so, yeah. Here it is. I don't hold it against any fellow Republicans for not wanting to jump the gate and co-sponsor the bill. And then here, it was the report based on observations and anecdotes from Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman's 2019 listening tour of Pennsylvania's 67 counties found that people were concerned about an increase of people driving under the influence. Okay. One working paper by a group of economists found that fatal crashes involved the driver who tested positive for THC had increased nationwide but did not appear to be related to legalization. So one working paper, not the consensus, but just one working paper by a group of economists found that fatal crashes involving a driver who tested for positive for THC had increased nationwide. Is it because, they've never looked for this before? They've never tested for that? Again, you need to look at the consensus, not just one-off cases, because of course there's always going to be those. You need to look at the majority of the data. And people were also concerned about cannabis acting as a gateway drug, according to Fetterman's report. That's a long-standing anxiety and complex topic. While some people who use cannabis might also use other drugs, there isn't definitive proof that cannabis is the cause. Now, this is really unfortunate because it just also goes to show how the people in Pennsylvania are sadly really just uneducated. Because if we look at the data, crash fatality rates after recreational cannabis legalization in Washington and Colorado. We go to the results. Pre-recreational cannabis legalization, annual changes in motor vehicle crash fatality rates for Washington and Colorado were similar to those of the control states, which basically means 3 years after recreational cannabis legalization, changes in motor vehicle crash fatality rates for Washington and Colorado were not statistically different from those in similar states without recreational cannabis legalization. So basically just says it made no difference whatsoever. The people don't know this. Their politicians in power do not want to seem to find the facts of it, but we do have studies, from the greater consensus that tell us the fact here. And also another one, alcohol as the gateway drug. I think we all know this. And I mean, if anyone wants to argue this, it's quite sad. The findings from the investigation support that alcohol should receive primary attention in school-based substance abuse programs, or here are the results. From Gutmann scale indicate that alcohol represented the gateway drug, leading to use of tobacco, cannabis, and other illicit substances. Moreover, students who used alcohol exhibiting a significantly greater likelihood of using both illicit drugs. And that's a fact. I started drinking at the age, I think my first time getting drunk was the age of 12 because of the influence of someone down the street from me. If I think back, alcohol is the gateway drug, no doubt. And just another recent article that actually came out yesterday, marijuana legalization has 3 life-saving public benefits, new study finds. Now, this one highlights the life-saving reductions in alcohol consumption, in tobacco consumption. Marijuana does have health consequences that people should keep in mind. However, nobody directly dies from it, right? And it's people want to harp on the substance, but it always comes back to the user and the user's lack of self-control, the user's past, and things that they've gone through. So just a lot more and a lot more complicated than just the substance itself. 2, reduced alcohol use and traffic deaths. This is a fact based on the overwhelming data. And number 3, declining violent crime. So just want to point that out. Going through this whole article is like the people feel that cannabis is a danger, but they don't actually know the facts. And the fact that the politicians are not educating themselves on it, it just doesn't help. But I want to point out that this is how you make change happen. Legalize Pennsylvania, a cannabis march in Harrisburg. Now, this is scheduled for April 20th, of course, the national cannabis holiday, but just wanted to point that out, how it can be disconnected over time, and this is why individual efforts of trying to re-educate and really tell people the facts, and just getting down to the point and re-educating, it's so important. So if you're in Pennsylvania, consider getting involved in this, try to spread the word, but at this point, I think it could get done, because regardless, money talks, and we've been seeing that from past videos. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly Pennsylvania can move forward with legalization, just based on the fact that the House and Senate is still controlled by the Republican majority. It's going to be interesting to see. Now, Todd Harrison wanted to point this one out, that cannabis may spark $766 million in state taxes. A cannabis tax in states now weighing legalization could add $766 million of tax costs a year for cannabis companies. Cannabis is fully legal in 6 states, yet several more permitted it for medical use or medicinal use. The Tax Foundation estimates that if 5 states likely to legalize pot in 2021 opt to tax the drug, companies would pay another $766 million in taxes annually, though the take may dip if consumers opt for the illicit cannabis due to the high result prices. Nationwide legalization may mean $7.3 billion in state taxes owed a year. Cannabis taxes hinge on legalization, so states' GDP expands while their tax bases widen. So fundamentally, yes, if taxes are increased, it's going to cost more to the consumer, but the whole point of this is trying to establish a legal market that's more safe and allows people to know what they're consuming. Plus, when politicians see the amount of tax revenue that they can bring in, it does make them more in favor of sensible policy that clearly legalizing cannabis and ending prohibition is for. And then cannabis companies impacted by such taxes include Curaleaf Holdings, Green Thumb Industries, Harvest Health, and Acreage Holdings. 5 states are Connecticut, New Mexico, New York, Rhode Island, and Virginia. So point is, these states do look like they are the closest ones to legalizing. We have seen New York go already. We've seen New Mexico already. We're waiting for Virginia July 1st, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. But this does just bring up the point that, obviously creating a legal market and not relying on the illicit one is fundamentally better for the long run and the big picture. Now, jumping over to Nevada, cannabis sales reach record high despite lag in tourism. It seems that despite some of the issues that they saw last year with lack of sales due to the fact people weren't traveling as much, in January 2021, they picked right back up to 83 million, which was an 11% increase. Now, there is a company that I've heard a lot of buzz about, Planet 13. I just want to jump through this quickly and show a bit of a comparison, because they do have a cool concept. It's kind of like the Disneyland for cannabis. And Planet 13 in 2021, they brought in, for Q1, total revenue of $23.8 million, including $9.7 million in March, for total revenue of $70.5 million in 2020. Now, the main thing I just wanted to jump down to was to see how a smaller cap US MSO is faring compared to some of the other large cap ones. Their revenue did increase from 16 million to 20 despite the Rona situation. They did increase their gross profits. Gross margins fell a little bit, but if we see, and honestly, year over year, they did not have great results. But again, this was a massive effect due to the lack of traveling and tourism. Mind you, they did still suffer quite a loss because of, just on the quarter, they suffered a loss, but they did not end up making as much in operations that they did in 2019 and 2020, again, because of the shutdown and all. And so, again, they're still losing a lot less money than Canadian LPs, but let me just highlight this again one more time, okay? Planet 13 brought in $23.8 million in a single quarter, and then $70.5 million in 2020. And if we actually look here at Planet 13 Holdings, they're valued at $1.2 billion. So $1.2 billion for bringing in $70.5 million a year. I just want to point out another company that's trading at a massive discount based on that valuation. Harvest Health and Recreation, market cap of $1.2 billion. Look at their financials. They brought in $231 million in 2021. So just goes to show that a lot of people have opinions about what can be big in the future and whatnot, but focusing on the fundamentals will get you the biggest opportunities, because if you focus on the fundamentals and you're buying companies at a greater discount, that's where you'll eventually see more growth in the long run. Now, I'm not putting down Planet 13 or anything like that. I just want to show you the difference, folks. 1.2 billion, and they just brought in 70 million. Harvest is also valued at 1.2 billion, and they brought in 231 million. I'm not saying any company, I'm just pointing that out. That's up to you to make the decision based on what you see with your eyes, okay? Now, just to round this off, some really cool information. Michigan University is the first in the nation to offer cannabis chemistry scholarships. So, Michigan University is it's Lake Superior State University in Sault Ste. Marie. So this is a Canadian one that made history in 2019, but now Steadfast Labs in Hazel Park, a cannabis testing lab, is offering annual $1,200 scholarships for LSSU students in the program, which teaches students how to analyze cannabis-related compounds and contaminants. I think I want to apply for this program. By funding the scholarship, Steadfast Labs, again, demonstrates their commitment to supporting future chemists who will enter the workforce and provide public safety in the cannabis field. Because yes, the more this becomes normalized and the more we realize the benefits, the more this is needed, says Dr. Stephen Johnson. Now, LSSU has opened a 2,600 square feet of cannabis chemistry facility, the Cannabis Center for Excellence, in February 2020. What a name. Looks awesome. Now, the cannabis industry is expected to, get this, create more than 500,000 jobs by 2022. So as of right now, they've done about 321. So that makes for about 180,000 more jobs to come by 2022 as the plant grows in popularity and legality, because there's still so much we have to discover about it. Sophomores and upperclassmen with a GPA of 3.0 or higher. Shit, I do not have that GPA. Would be nice, though, with preference given to Wayne and Oakland County residents, and I'm not even American, so sadly I can't jump on that. But this is awesome, and hopefully more universities do follow this. Now, on top of this, the Mayor of London over in the UK is looking to examine benefits of decriminalizing cannabis. So Sadiq Khan says that he will set up an independent drugs commission in the capital if re-elected. Now, how unfortunate is this? Is that he's basically leveraging his re-election on the fact that young people probably want looser laws on cannabis. And I mean, that's how politics works, right? The world is pretty much leveraged people versus unleveraged people. People that have something to offer versus people that don't. And so he is the mayor right now, and he's saying, if you re-elect me, I'll work on possibly decriminalizing cannabis. That's politics. Sadly, that's how it works. But the Mayor of London, should he be re-elected on May 6th, Sadiq Khan says he would set up an independent London Drugs Commission to examine the potential health, economic, and criminal justice benefits of declassifying the Class B drug. So, Khan believes there is widespread public support for a more relaxed approach to decriminalization, citing polls showing more than half of the UK and nearly 2/3 of those in the capital support legalizing for adult recreational use. And again, if we're living in democracies, then why the heck are the politicians making moves that support what, the greater majority of people want? Interesting, but just wanted to point that out. Politics is a dirty game. That's why most people don't want to get involved at all. And the fact that politics is politicizing everything is also just very annoying. I'm sure you're all well aware of that, as I am. But all we can do is, focus on what we can control ourselves, and hope to, as investors, make some money so that we can give back or make some positive change in our own life. Now, I just wanted to highlight this as well, because this was covered by Marijuana Moment. DEA's proposed hemp rules are contrary to intent of Congress, committee chairs say. Now, two House committee chairmen recently sent a letter to the heads of the Justice Department and U.S. Department of Agriculture, urging them to address the problems stakeholders have identified in the DEA proposed rule on hemp. Farmers have expressed concern that the DEA's interim final rule, IFR, for the crop would effectively criminalize in-process hemp extracts. Hemp is defined under the 2018 Farm Bill, and I don't hate many things. I don't like to have hate but I don't hate many things. But the fact that hemp is defined under the Farm Bill, so it's like politics are defining what hemp is, which should not be the case at all. But under the 2018 Farm Bill, it's defined as containing no more than 0.3% THC. And we already know that hemp is not psychoactive. It just has CBD. But businesses are worried that the agency's rules could lead to enforcement action during a stage of manufacturing for extracts when the product temporarily exceeds the limit. And this is the unfortunate thing. Although the 2018 Farm Bill did legalize hemp, it's not legalizing it for free market to use it. It's tightly controlled by the government, which is very sad and very unfortunate. But we'll get to that next point in a moment. House Agricultural Committee David Scott and House Appropriations Subcommittee on Agricultural Chairman Sanford Bishop sent a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland and Tom Vislick late last month. And we do know that Merrick Garland is for, researching the possible potential benefits as opposed to, keeping things the way they are just based on feeling and not on facts. But lawmakers wrote that there may be serious unintended consequences that could arise from the DEA's 2020 IFR on hemp. In order to address these concerns and not cause unnecessary damage to the hemp industry, we encourage the DEA and the USDA to collaborate with the hemp industry to resolve these issues. And I hope that they do, because I just want to point out that, before the 1937 Cannabis Tax Act that made cannabis not criminal, but you would get taxed if you were caught with it. So obviously you just wouldn't grow it because no one had the money to grow it and just pay the taxes off back then like they do now. Hemp was free to grow anywhere you wanted. Anyone could have grown it. Like throughout history, hemp was just free to grow and there was no control from government. And just to show you this, if you've never watched Hemp for Victory, the United States Department of Agriculture in 1942, 5 years after they put the Tax Act, and in World War II, when the U.S. kind of was realizing like, holy crap, we need to actually pump our tires up, we need to win this. They pulled hemp out of illegality and got every farmer in the U.S. to grow hemp because they were using it for lubricants, for the airplane wheels. They were using it for rope, for I don't think it was for sails or anything, but anything that you could use hemp for, they were using it. And like, I encourage you to watch this video. Not going to play it all, but this goes to show how times have changed, but not for the people. And I'll just show you a little clip.
Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. For thousands of years even then, this plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. For the sailor, no less than the hangman.
Literally, I just read a book recently that was saying America was discovered because the UK and the Spanish, no, was it the Spanish? No, the UK and the Dutch needed more hemp. Since their countries were so small, they were running out of space. So one of the main reasons they did go over to America was to actually find hemp. So obviously, the more I read history, the more it just kind of boggles my mind how this has gone on for so long. And again, using the term marijuana, which politicized this plant in the beginning, unfortunately, confuses everyone, so they don't know about hemp and they don't know about cannabis. And then what's crazy is that after they won the war, guess what the U.S. government did? They made it illegal again. And then it wasn't until 1970 that Nixon made it criminal and they could start locking people up to fill the prison industrial complex. This is all factual information if you're willing to look for it. So I do invite you to watch this video. It's very short. It's 14 minutes and 11 seconds, but it does really help, put hemp in one category for what it is, for the industrial sustainable plant that, could really revolutionize how we do things and help us eliminate plastics, versus cannabis, the medicine that could replace, most of the opioid prescriptions that Big Pharma, or most of the opioid medicine that Big Pharma pushes on everybody today, and, actually using these plants, re-educating people and showing them what they are, and, moving forward for a more sustainable and healthier future, because I think we all know that we need this going forward. Now, that is it for today's episode, though, folks. I hope you enjoyed this, found it educational. Please let me know in the discussion what you think. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you have yet to do so, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis. Have a great week, everybody.